Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Eczema podcast. Today, I have a research scientist and a founder of a company called Codex Labs who is here on the show today. She holds over 50 patents in the US, and she had previously built biotech companies, and now she focuses her time on skincare, creating skincare products for different skin conditions, including eczema and topical steroid withdrawal as well. I'm really excited to have you on the show, Barbara. Thank you for coming on.
Abby, thank you for having me. It's a real honor.
And I love that you have such a background in doing so many different things. So it's so great. How did you decide to get into the skin industry and the skincare industry as well?
So it was because of my son, actually. He has eczema. And so he was born back in 2009, and he was one of these eczema babies. And so we were managing it with whatever we could get. So coconut oil. I was grinding up vitamin B12 tablets and putting them into the coconut oil, managing his diet, putting him off milk, basically everything that every mom goes through. And he was then diagnosed with ADHD. We got kind of control of the eczema by the time he was about 6. And then at age 8, he was diagnosed with ADHD. And so I was traveling a lot. So I ended up selling my company at that time so that I could be more at home with him, because he also had depression, anxiety, kind of all those other issues associated with actually eczema and ADHD. And so I wanted to do something to help, because it had been a nightmare for the last kind of 8 years. And so that's how we got into skincare. I bought a small company in Ireland. I'd actually been traveling a lot to Europe for my job, and I was buying up any product I could find that was a balm for eczema, for anything. And then I decided, you know what, I think I want to make my own. And so we bought a little Irish company with the products that he had been using. We improved them. And actually 5 years later now, with plant stem cell ingredients from Biotech that took 3-4 years to develop, we have our first eczema lotion. So it's been a long journey, and we've collected other plants along the way for acne and for skin barrier repair. So it's been an interesting journey, Abby.
That's so exciting. And we're going to talk more about the plant stem cells later, because I know we briefly talked online about how helpful those can be in the place of using certain things like corticosteroids. But I think our audience would love to hear it as well. And I also want to share that it must have been so difficult to watch your son go through that, because my son is 8 right now, and I can just imagine if he went through all those things. And my youngest son had severe eczema too. So if he had depression and ADHD, that's a lot to go through as a mom.
It was. And looking back now he's 16. We get flare ups occasionally behind the knees, or in other areas I'm not allowed to mention, where things kind of glide together in the underwear. But it's only during finals. So I feel like we've made, an incredible journey from where we started when he was a baby and his entire body was covered in red spots. And also on the depression and anxiety, we've been able to, the ADHD is managed with medication like Focalin or Adderall. So I'm just glad we have the tools, and that I sometimes look back and go, wow, as a professional woman, it's like, oh my God, the amount of time my career took a hit. And then I look at the child, and he's becoming this incredible young man. And it's like, every bit of that investment of energy, blood, sweat, and tears, crying when he was having flare-ups because I didn't know what to do. It's been worth it. Every last bit.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I remember those moments of crying when my son had his flare-ups too, and it's never easy.
And you feel helpless, right? And you want to help them, and you don't know what to do.
For sure. A lot of mom guilt comes in with that.
Absolutely.
So for yourself as a research scientist, I imagine that you've spent so much time studying the skin, the connection to gut health, and so many other things. So I'll let you start where you feel like would be appropriate to share more about this. To share more about this conversation.
Absolutely. So I always thought initially, when people were looking at diseases like eczema or acne or psoriasis, any of these diseases, we've got to treat the skin, we've got to treat it from the outside. And what I didn't realize is you can actually make a 60% improvement by treating it through the gut. And I know that, 4,000 years ago, Greek philosopher Hippocrates said all diseases start in the gut, and everybody was like, yeah, some old Greek philosopher. What we're finding now is how much gut inflammation, how much leaky gut, how much gut microbial imbalance, so basically the gut microbiome being in dysbiosis, have an effect on skin, particularly on conditions like eczema. And we're also looking at how genetically, you can think of it as leaky tissue, how much the leaky skin, right, the skin that allows allergens to penetrate, the gut that allows allergens to penetrate into the body, and all of these cause that immune reaction that keeps increasing in its magnitude and causes itch and causes discomfort and redness and basically makes the skin break down faster. How they're related. And then the other part that I never understood, even though I've, experimented it with my son who had ADHD, like his meds work better if I fed him a protein breakfast. For example, they would last longer. If he ate carbs, he wouldn't be able to focus. Sugar, forget it. So how much actually the diet has an impact, again, through the gut and through the mental state. And so how stress, how cortisol also affects inflammation. And that if we're looking at diseases like eczema, it's not enough to just stop certain inflammatory pathways. You have to really take a holistic approach, the psychological, the dietary, the physical, and then obviously, moisturize. That doesn't change.
That's so important. I completely agree. All of those things that you mentioned they play such a big role in healing the skin.
And some we control, some we don't control as much. And, again, with young kids, for example, with eczema, quality of sleep, right? If they're uncomfortable, if they're itching, if they're scratching, if they're crying, they're not sleeping, which means they're not healing. So just really, to me now, a lot of these things are about breaking these cycles and breaking these loops. And how can we do it? And what tools can we bring to really improve and also not have to have a dependence on corticosteroids. So we also work with a lot of people who have topical steroid withdrawal syndrome. And one of the things that still blows my mind, Abby, is that it's not recognized as a disease. So the
sure.
dermatology community is still arguing if it even is a disease or a condition, and we don't know what causes it. We don't know who's susceptible. And so it's like this big sword hanging over the head of anyone with eczema. Will I get TSW? And I thought it was mostly in adults with, decades of corticosteroid usage. But now as we're growing our community, there are moms coming. They have kids that are a few months old or kids that are toddlers, and they already have TSW. So what's going on? As a scientist, it's just this incredible puzzle that I want to solve.
Yeah, and more kids are having eczema, and I know a lot of the people that I know, the moms and parents, their kids are having it as well, and it's just becoming so common.
And even in people like, I don't have eczema, my husband doesn't have eczema, why does our son have it? What mutated, what changed, or what did I always, as a mom, so what did I do wrong? And as a scientist, it's like, why did this happen? So
Yeah, so many questions. And I know one thing you said as well is that kids who have eczema are also more likely to have ear infections as well.
that's right. It turns out that some of the structure, the cells that form the middle ear, actually are part of that originator cell. So if we look at, when the embryo is forming, so you have the egg that's fertilized and then it starts splitting into cells which start forming the embryo. That initial kind of 4-cell embryo, one of those cells is what basically creates our skin, our gut barrier, our lung lining, our brain lining, as well as part of our middle ear. And so if there is a genetic defect there, then they leak, they all leak. And so the middle ear infection becomes more common with people, kids with eczema, and then they get more antibiotics to treat the ear infection. The antibiotics kill their gut microbiome. then there's nothing to keep the gut lining intact. So the gut leaks more, so they get more allergic reactions, more inflammation. So you can think of it as then they become more food sensitive, then their skin becomes more sensitive. So you can think of it as like our barriers, and then they develop asthma. Many kids with eczema also develop asthma, which is the lung barrier being leaky. And ADHD and autism, I don't know if you know that about kids with eczema have a 50% higher risk of having autism or ADHD.
I saw that study, yeah, and it's linked to so many other health conditions, which is tough.
Yeah, and to parse it out. So I figured let's just start by trying to stop this atopic march at birth. And so what can we do, for example, to cleanse babies in the most gentle possible way, not strip any of their skin microbiome? What can we do to really fortify their skin barrier in the most natural way possible? That's where the plant stem cells come in. And then we're going to be introducing an oral histidine supplement with the right dosing and the right also vitamins and minerals. How can we actually then give them that amino acid that they need to rebuild the skin barrier with the filaggrin and with the natural moisturization factor? And how do we tailor the dosage? So we've been working with a UK company that did the original studies back in 2017 and 2021. And how do we basically create something that's manageable and affordable for a mom, right? So I figured if you give them a drop of oral suspension, you have a soap cleanser, and you have a lotion, that's doable, right? And you need the lotion anyway. You need to wash them anyway. And, 2 milliliters from a dropper is easy to do.
For sure. And yeah, I really love that, your company does so many things, not only just the topical side of things, but also you shared earlier with me on offline that you also have the genetic testing component, which is going to be really useful because, like you shared, eczema is also linked to the gut health as well.
Exactly. And so we test, for example, for the filaggrin gene deficiency. Not everybody with eczema has a filaggrin gene deficiency, but if you do, then you know that taking the histidine supplement will actually improve your skin barrier. Or, for example, if you have a deficiency in your antioxidant, say like catalase, SOD2 enzymes, then you know you need to be taking more antioxidants in your diet. And then we also have a genetic test for vitamins because if you don't transport them or your body can't absorb them, it doesn't matter how many of the vitamins you put into your body. They'll either, like vitamin D, get stored in your fat, or they'll just go right through you. And so understanding, how you then supplement, how you give vitamins, how you give those, antioxidants are critical, right, for an inflammatory skin condition. So how you manage, their diet and their supplements.
For sure. And on your website, is the genetic testing component on the Decode Me?
It will be, yes. So we're going to be actually launching Decode Me in beta in April, and you'll be able to find it there. So you can make a free account. We've put in things like weather, UV index, pollution, so that people who have skin sensitivities, yeah, that's right. So people who have skin sensitivities can basically also check the weather. Like that's one thing I found with my son in California. I don't know if you remember, but we had those awful forest fires. And if he'd go outside, he'd break out, he'd flare up again because of all the dust and the ash that was in the air. It just really irritated his skin. And in China, they've done studies that people with eczema suffer on high pollution days and usually have a flare up 3-4 days after one of these high pollution days. So to me, that's kind of really important for people with a skin sensitivity to know. And then, yes, you can find our test. We'll also have an inflammation marker test. And then by the summer, we're going to have a gut test to measure kind of everything from inflammation to gut microbiome, because that's really important. We do have a probiotic. So again, for people with TSW or adults with eczema, the people that we've been testing in our alpha test, they're depleted. They're completely depleted of things like lactobacillus, bifidobacterium. And it's just amazing that keystone species you'd expect to see are like, it's not that they're low, Abby, they're zero. Like you just see, Lactobacillus acidophilus, 0, Lactobacillus reuteri, 0, Lactobacillus paracasei, 0, Bifidum breve, Bifidum lactis, 0, 0, 0, 0. And we're like, how can this be? So, and people do report improvements. And then we also have a prebiotic, because then we found out that if the gut lining isn't in good shape, and you're not, very good about always eating, resistant potato starch and your oligosaccharides and your, where are you going to be eating chicory root and marshmallow root all the time, right? Or artichokes or asparagus all the time. So we created a prebiotic, and we're now telling people, don't even bother with the probiotic in month 1, because if you don't rebuild your gut with the prebiotic, it's just going to flush through. So you're wasting your money. So go rebuild your gut for about 30 days. Some people need 60, and then you can start on the prebiotic, and then you'll start seeing the differences. But again, being a scientist, I want to be able to measure the people's progress and just see, are certain species taking more? Are certain species missing? Do they need to buy a separate supplement for akkermansia to further build on the gut lining? What we found is the prebiotic can usually get a lot of people there, because it gives kind of the materials that are needed. The potato-resistant starch actually helps rebuild basically akkermansia, as well as the fecal bacterium Prausnitzi, which produces butyrate. So we need these butyrate-producing bacteria, because then the butyrate is used by the gut cells to be healthy. And then it also has glutamine, which is important for tight junctions so that the gut doesn't leak. So what we're trying to do is seal up the gut, and then with the lotion, seal up the skin. And then we've addressed 2 of the key kind of surface areas of the body. Children actually have a almost 2.6 bigger surface area to volume ratio than an adult. That was also a calculation I did just for fun. And a 2-year-old has roughly 3 times more surface to volume than an adult. By the time they're 12, it's about 1.5 times more. And then kind of around 6, it's about 2 times more. But that was fascinating, because it means the exposure to environmental factors and allergens is way higher and way more severe for children. And that's probably also why people, quote, grow out of eczema, because that surface to volume ratio shrinks. Now the gut, this was also like blew my mind when I learned this. The surface area of your gut, so your small intestine and your colon, is about 100 times that of your skin. So the amount, again, of allergen absorption or toxin absorption we can get through our gut is way bigger. So we have to seal, if we can seal those 2 barriers up, it's hard to seal your lungs. So at that point, it's kind of, if you can seal the skin and you can seal the gut, then you should reduce all those allergic reactions. If you reduce the allergic reactions, you reduce the cytokine storm, you reduce the itch scratch cycle. And we've actually seen improvement, like, and we ran 2 clinical trials, one with just our soap and the lotion, and one with the soap, the lotion, and our histidine supplement, which also has an extra antioxidant in there, special Patagonian antioxidant for gut inflammation. And we saw a decrease of about 93 to 94% in eczema score in 100% of the patients in 8 weeks. So to me, that was kind of what said it all. And we also saw a reduction in itch of about 88% for people with moderate eczema, and 97% for people with mild eczema. So to me, that was the win. That made my day.
Sure. Wow, that's amazing. Is there a link to the study that I can include in this, or is it just an internal study?
I'll send it to you to read. We've written it up into 2 papers, and we've submitted them for publication. So we're hoping that we can get them published in a dermatological journal. And I'll definitely, once we have the manuscripts published, then more than happy. But I can send you the internal studies.
Sure, that'd be amazing. And that's such amazing results to see. Wow.
Yep, so that was 18 to 65, and now we're repeating it on kids, and we're also running a study on our probiotic and our prebiotic to compare that to the histidine, so that we can understand how gut inflammation versus gut microbiome impact eczema.
Wow, I love that. And I actually have your skin barrier support supplement here as well. Just one of them, so I'll just show it for anyone who's interested in looking at it. Yeah, and I see the powder that you mentioned that is also the anti-inflammatory portion of it too.
Exactly. So that's basically, we call that the M3 complex that comes from Chile. There are 3 plants that are eaten actually by the Mapuche tribe. So we licensed the plants from them, and then we buy the plants from them at actually market, like really good. We gave them, they were arguing that the plants are cheap. We were like, no, this is like a biotech ingredient. We're going to pay you like a biotech ingredient. And so it has 3 plants. Matico is basically, there's a leaf extract from matico, and it's like a orange ball kind of plant, like the flowers look like these orange balls, and it's native to Chile and Argentina, and it has a ton of flavonoids, so basically antioxidant flavonoids, and then a ton of other like tripernitoids, like terpenoids. And then, so what this does is it's very rich in a molecule called stigmasterol, and that helps protect your gut lining, like the mucosal lining of your gut. And it also reduces inflammation, which is because it actually modulates the microbiome in favor of those bacteria that produce the butyrate that we were talking about. So it really improves the intestinal barrier function, and it also increases, like your body increases the number of these goblet cells, and these are basically cells that hold the gut together. They're kind of like your structural keystone cells. And then the other plant is Aristotelia chilensis, is basically, so there's matico, and then there's maqui and murta. And maqui is a little evergreen tree. So again, it's basically another leaf extract. Most people think you go to the berry, but the tribal people actually use the leaves. And that has huge amounts of antioxidants. So anthocyanins, flavonols, alkaloids. So that's a great antioxidant to neutralize free radicals in the gut. And the last one, the murta, is again a shrub, and it has phenolics. So gallic acid, quercetin that we know, camphorol. So they're also antioxidants, but there it's more limiting lipid peroxidation and helping your other antioxidant enzymes. So it's kind of, you can think of it as like a multi-pronged approach to reducing gut inflammation. And we're even seeing people who have like IBS or Crohn's are improving when they take the supplement, because that's also
great.
linked with eczema. So it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you've created so many products. And I have taken histidine in the past, and I found that when I would take it, I would get some histamine reactions. And I can't remember if I flared a lot, but I just kept having to go to the washroom, I remember. And I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the studies said that it's 4 grams, but if you take less, it can create a histamine reaction. Is that right?
So the study does say 4 grams for adults and 0.8 grams for kids. In some people, it can create a histamine reaction because the body converts it into histamine. So what we found is by combining it with this antioxidant, we actually reduce that reaction. So we've actually not had so far, knock on wood, any cases of people having that kind of reaction. But you're absolutely right. If you buy like the bulk powder off of Amazon, and it also depends on the purity and the quality of the manufacturer. So that's why we're using, pharmaceutical grade, making sure it's pure. We're testing it for heavy metals. We don't want to have any, cobalt, chromium, arsenic, lead that, we hear about in supplements now all the time coming off of Amazon. So the thing is, with the supplement you took, I'm not sure if it was a contaminant in the histidine or it was the histidine itself. So
that makes
but you don't have to take the full 4 grams. The full 4 grams is usually for people with moderate eczema and, larger sized adults. Teenagers are more than fine with 2 grams, like half of that dose. And honestly, if you're kind of it's kind of 90 to 120 pounds, it's probably more than adequate to take 2 grams.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I was afraid to take it again because of the reactions I had the first time, but I'm open to trying it again, especially with the other extracts that you mentioned are in your product, which sounds really nice.
So yes, and we do guarantee the purity of the histidine to make sure that there's no other amino acids mixed in with it in the manufacturing process.
I love that. And tell me about the testing. I know you mentioned you test for filaggrin and the vitamin as well, um, and the other tests. Are those mainly blood tests or other types of
Cheek
tests?
swab. Cheek swab. So you
Oh,
basically take it's a swab, and you do 20 times on each cheek. You put it back in the tube. We send it over to our lab in Boston, and within a week or two, you get an analysis. And we actually, one of the things we do differently from other companies is we have a partnership with a genetic counseling company. And so you'll get a notification that your test results are ready. You schedule a half-hour meeting with the genetic counselor, and they actually walk you through the report, because
wow.
we don't want people trying to, read a technical report and not know what it means, because it can really scare you, right? Like if the report says you have a deficiency in this, that can be incredibly stressful. So we want the genetic counselor to kind of walk through and say, well, 40% of the population is deficient in this. This one's not a big deal. For example, add more antioxidants, add more berries to your diet, or more vitamin C to your diet. With the filaggrin, they'll say, yep, you're in that category of the weak skin barrier part of the population. You might want to consider the histidine supplement. So, or, moisturizers that will help in a way your skin to rebuild filaggrin. And that was one of the things actually we also wanted our lotion to do. And that's where we did a lot of research to look for plants and plant stem cells that could activate and make the filaggrin gene and the other kind of structural protein genes. They're called loricrin and involucrin. So they're kind of a trio of proteins in your skin that give it its kind of structure and keep it tightly bound together. We wanted to activate those genes more, and with the plants. And so those are some of the extracts that are found in our eczema lotion, so that we help rebuild, we help fortify that skin barrier. And we also want to reduce the cytokine. So we also downregulate, one of the plants downregulates IL-4, which is kind of the big trigger in that itch scratch cycle.
For sure. The same IL-4 that Dupixent blocks as well.
Exactly. They block, I think, IL-4 and IL-13.
Mhm.
We just block IL-4 because we haven't found a plant yet that blocks IL-13, to be perfectly honest. So,
But
so
that's amazing that there is a plant that can actually block IL-4.
exactly. So it stops that whole Th2, the kind of type 2 helper cell cycle, and it basically blocks the IgE production and that whole inflammation, itching. So the whole allergic response. So
Wow.
yeah. So, and it downregulates it by a factor of 50. So we're excited about that, we can just, when you couple that with a colloidal oatmeal, which is the OTC ingredient, and then you throw in hyaluronic acid ceramides, then you pretty much, in an antioxidant, you have something that really soothes the skin. And even for things like hives or contact dermatitis, you can feel kind of that instant soothing and cooling effect of the lotion without it actually having menthol or anything like that, which is horrible for eczema. So we're really, really proud of that product. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. So you're saying that even the cheek swab is not just done for filaggrin, but even for the vitamin deficiencies and everything else?
Exactly. So
Wow.
to collect genetic material, we basically use skin cells from the inside of your cheek. For if you want to test, for example, your CRP inflammatory marker, that's a blood spot. So that's basically a little blood prick, and then you put 4 blood spots on a little card and send it back. Hormones we do through saliva. So you basically get 4 tubes and you spit in them. For example, if you want to know your diurnal cortisol, like basically how stressed are you, what is your cortisol pattern. And then for heavy metals, it's a combination. We want to do long-term and short-term exposure. So there's a combination of urine, and blood. And so, and not all heavy metals are detectable in both. So we just, some use both methods just to be sure. Some use one method. And so that's how we look at heavy metals, but also minerals that you should have. So,
That's great.
because
And
like
so,
zinc is important for eczema, right?
for
So
sure. So once your customers do the tests, are the solutions found in all your supplements or just a few, or will they have to turn elsewhere to get some support as well?
So for example, we don't make a general vitamin, although for kids, the gummies that we're going to have and oral suspension we're going to have will have the vitamins that are specifically geared towards eczema. So people won't have to deal with, here's the vitamin, here's the histidine, take two things. It'll just be, here's the drop or here's the gummy. So we're trying to take care of that. If people need vitamin C supplementation, we don't, that's the kind of thing they can pick up pretty much at any grocery store these days. But yeah, then we'll have, we have the lotion. We also have kind of some ancillary products, like if they need more hydration, more moisturization, then we have an oil that kind of helps lock the lotion in because the lotion is absorbing. And then we also have some cleansing products, like if people are adults and they're wearing makeup, or adolescent teenagers with, girls with eczema, then for removing the makeup, that won't actually hurt the skin barrier and in fact help the skin barrier. And then we have, little ancillary things like a lip balm, again, which is super pure, but helps, again, rebuild the skin barrier, especially for people who get perioral dermatitis. So we've been trying to really focus on the various aspects of dermatitis. Next year, we're going to be going into seborrheic dermatitis, which is a whole different animal than atopic dermatitis.
Sure, that's different.
But yeah, right now we're just really focused on rebuilding the skin barrier and rebuilding the gut barrier. So kind of think of it, there's the histidine, prebiotic, probiotic for the gut. And then on the outside, there's the soap, which actually has the seal of both the National Eczema Association and the National Psoriasis Foundation, because it doesn't strip moisture. And Abby, this was the most difficult product we ever developed, was a soap. I know.
Wow.
It's funny. It's funny to think of that.
Yeah, 'cause soaps are usually the easiest to make. So it's interesting that it was the opposite for you guys.
But we wanted to demonstrate and not have it strip the natural skin microbiome. And we also wanted it to have a pH that's basically as close to 7 as possible. And so to make a soap, so we had to make it really high in glycerin, and then it was like super soft and squishy. So it was a 3-year process to convert a 400-year-old Irish cold process that also won't hurt or damage any of the other ingredients, like the carrot and the calendula in there, to keep their activity. That doesn't strip the microbiome, that doesn't strip moisture, that doesn't strip skin oil. So I think we went through like 24 iterations of this formulation.
Wow, that's amazing. I can share the screen for anyone who's watching the video version on YouTube of this podcast. But yeah, I can just show what the soaps look like. And it looks like you have 3 versions.
We do. And so for eczema, we want the unscented soap.
Oh, okay, so that would be one back here. Oh, this one, unscented.
That's right. That's right. And you can see the carrot in there, actually.
Oh, that's nice. So you mentioned it's a pH of 7, and that's
7.8.
7.8.
We didn't quite get to 7.
Oh, that's very interesting. In most cases, because I would think
soaps
that
have a pH of 9 to 10.
Oh, I see. Because I know most people want to bring the soaps even more acidic to help with the skin barrier. So in your case, you just still want to keep it alkaline?
You can't make a soap that isn't alkaline. So the best we could do is bring it to 7, but what we found is because it has it has what we call super fat. So it's one of the highest glycerin containing soaps. And so that's why it doesn't strip moisture, and that's why it actually doesn't strip sebum, so the skin oil. And that's why it doesn't change. It actually has no effect on the skin barrier, and it also doesn't change the skin pH, because it's very, very high in fat, but it's still a solid bar of soap. So that was the challenge. How do you make something that isn't like mush, yet it doesn't hurt the microbiome? We wanted the calendula in there to keep the antioxidant. Calendula is kind of our one of our eczema heroes because it's such a great antioxidant. And then the carrot adds carotenoids, more antioxidants. So it's kind of an antioxidant / high glycerin soap with an almost neutral pH.
That's great. That's great. So for I've seen products out there where they say pH balancing 5.6 or something like that. So is that completely different?
That's a Syndat. So that's not a soap. So that's why they call them bars or cleansing bars. Those are made using surfactants. And so those are essentially chemical soaps. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And yes, it's good to keep the pH of the soap as low as possible, but when we did microbiome studies to compare some of the competing products out there on the market, they do actually affect the microbiome. So while they're pH balanced, because they still have more of a surfactant action, they kill the bacteria in the microbiome.
Oh, like even the good bacteria, you're saying?
Even the good bacteria, that's right.
Oh, interesting. I love how you even have the science background to even compare the effectiveness of your soaps with others.
And so we basically ran all of them. I don't know if you know the My Microbiome standard over in Germany, Krista Neumann's standard. So she does testing. So she actually looks also kind of, it's another extra safety check of how does it kill the good bacteria? Does it kill the bad bacteria? Does it change the ratio of the bacteria on your skin? And so that was also the hard part of getting the soap out, was we wanted it to pass this My Microbiome test. And that's what took us about 5 or 6 tries to actually figure out how to get this glycerin content in the soap to the right level that the bacteria are happy and they stay happy.
That's great. That's really great. And out of curiosity as well, I've heard that I've heard that olive oil can affect the skin barrier for patients or people with atopic dermatitis. So how does it work when it's in soaps? Does it have a different action in that way?
So the primary component of the soap is shea butter and cocoa butter. The olive oil is there more as a binding agent for the carrot and the calendula. So the concentration of the olive oil is actually quite low. And I know that sunflower oil, I mean, all of our lotions are formulated on the base of sunflower oil. So think of it as basically it's there, it provides some linoleic acid, but it's not the major component of the soap. It's a couple percent. So
I love that. That's really great. And actually that's a really good segue to talk about your other products as well, because I know one thing that we want to talk about was plant cells and how that's different. So yeah, I'd love for you to share more about that.
absolutely. So we spent a lot of time working with a partner on calendula. And we all know kind of marigold, calendula, lots of great antioxidants. So, flavonoids, phenolics, carotenoids. So basically every antioxidant you could want. It also has vitamin C. So great anti-inflammatory plant. So we were able to essentially get a stem cell that really boosts that activity, that anti-inflammatory activity. The sunflower oil basically is great because it has high linoleic acid content. It helps maintain the skin barrier. It's an emollient. It helps reduce transepidermal water loss, and it also has vitamins D and E and beta carotene. So sunflower oil is kind of our foundation in which all these plant actives are dissolved. And then we have comfrey. And comfrey was called bonet in Ireland. It's been used for hundreds of years. It was actually used to heal bones. And what's interesting is it contains allantoin. So allantoin is another anti-itch compound, and it also has rosmarinic acid. And so what's interesting is that there are pharmaceutical or OTC products with allantoin, 0.5% becomes OTC to treat dry, rough, scaly skin. So we can directly do it from the allantoin in the plant. And it also helps with this extracellular matrix synthesis, so really supporting this lauricrin and volucrin, all these plant fibers these protein fibers in your skin, as well as the filaggrin. So the comfrey cranks up the filaggrin. And rosmarinic acid is great because it decreases the skin surface pH, and which helps the skin produce more ceramides. So rosmarinic acid is great again for improving, hydration and this transepidermal loss. The third plant is really cool. This is called the Dracula plant. It's Haberleia rhodopensis from Bulgaria. It's called what is called a tertiary relic plant, which means that it dies. It looks like it dies, and then every spring it pops up all green. And it's very rich in a chemical called myconoside. And this increases the synthesis of collagen. So collagen 6 and collagen 16 and elastin. So this is great because it, again, helps that cellular matrix, and it improves skin barrier cohesion. So, and elasticity. So you don't have that, it basically helps you when the skin's regrowing from the plaque. So the comfrey helps the skin turn over the plaques, and then the Habrulea helps the new skin that's forming underneath be nice and elastic, rich in collagen. And then the comfrey gives it the ceramide, so it's nice and dense and filled. And then the last one is the soothing plant. So it's called Padina pavonica. It's an algae, so it's like a brown algae that's in the Mediterranean. And that has not only polyphenols and polysaccharides, but it has the fucoidins. So it has like the Fuca serratus, the whole kind of brown algae plant. So fucoidins, laminarins, alginic acids, and these are amazing moisturizers. So they really prevent dryness, they prevent cracking, and they have great wound healing properties. So it's really the combination of these 4 things, and then we supplement it with hyaluronic acid, we supplement it with ecoceramide, so that there's some ceramide to immediately replenish while the comfrey does its job. And so these 4 plants kind of together, they're what repairs and fortifies the skin barrier.
That's amazing. I love that every ingredient has been so carefully hand selected and formulated and very well thought through as well.
And researched. So that's the part that I love, because we can basically say, no, the reason we rebuild this matrix is because we upregulate filaggrin, loracrin, involucrin. Like, we know that these are the structural pieces, so we know that basically we need to do that, and we do all the genes. So we actually take these plant extracts and we take human tissues, and we then look at the gene expression in those tissues of those plants and of the combination of the complex of the product. So we know kind of exactly what the product is doing. And similarly with itch, basically, we know that from these gene expression studies, we downregulate the genes that pertain to these cytokines, and also the differentiation of the T cells. So we actually downregulate the Th2 cells too. So that's how we know that it's going to reduce the itching and the burning. And it's then cool when you actually put it on people and people use it and people are like, oh my God, I'm not itching anymore within like an hour. So the science is actually working, and it's working the way it should, and you're getting the result you should, and it's helping everybody. So it's, to me, when it all comes together, after like 3 or 4 years of research, that's the kind of moment of truth, and it's cool.
That's great. That's great. And I know you also said that you have products for topical steroid withdrawal sufferers as well. So is the lotion, have you found if that's helpful, or is there a different product that's more helpful?
So that's an excellent question, Abby, because what we found is a lot of people with TSW can't do lotions. And that's because lotions typically have a preservative system in them and water-based, and their skin is just so sensitive, and they do a lot better with oils. And actually, that's where we have our facial oil and our cleansing oil that is very popular now with people with TSW, because again, they're barrier function rebuilding, they're moisturizing, they deliver essential vitamins and minerals, they have anti-inflammatories in them. And so those actually work very well for people with TSW. And we're working actually on a body oil to complement that, because that was something when we started working on the eczema lotion 3-4 years ago, we didn't know that people with TSW can't tolerate the lotion. So the lotion's more for people with eczema. And then for TSW, we'll have a product next year that's just geared specifically for TSW.
That makes a lot of sense. And actually, on your website, for those who are watching the video version on YouTube, yeah, it's very interesting. I can see all your products here in one go. So with the prebiotic and the symbiotic as well, and the supplements and lotions and the oil as well.
And we kind of wanted to show people, it's a skin gut issue. So you've got to solve it. And, not everyone needs everything in there. People can pick and choose. Like, if you really look at the core, it's the skin barrier supplement, the soap, and the lotion. But then depending on, the state of your gut, if you do run the test, you might realize you don't have these keystone species. So we want to make it so that it's like modular. And also, if you have mild eczema, you don't need the supplement. All you need is the soap and the lotion. So what we're trying to do is keep it as simple and affordable as possible.
I love that. And so when you start to target seborrheic dermatitis next year, does that mean that you're coming out with a shampoo as well?
We're working on a shampoo. We want to not use coal tar. Coal tar is one of these.
Sure.
Oh my God! It feels like you're grinding up road and putting it in a shampoo. So we're trying to figure out how to work with things like salicylic acid to make washes. And so, for example, for psoriasis, it turned out that the body wash we did for acne works really well for psoriasis. So now we're tweaking it for psoriasis. And we're kind of looking at really we call them the core four. So that's eczema, acne, psoriasis, and rosacea. And
Oh, I love that.
and acne and rosacea are genetically related, so you get the same cytokine. Psoriasis is totally different. Eczema has some overlap in terms of the genetics, like the cytokines with psoriasis, but not everything. So it's fascinating how these diseases kind of work in the human body. But what we do know is every single one of them, gut plays a huge, huge role, and so does stress.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense. And it's something that we see a lot too with the clients that we work with.
Yeah, and how do you manage stress, right? I mean, they're already stressed from having the condition, so
And a lot of trauma from it as well.
exactly, and self-confidence issues, and how do you lower their cortisol?
For sure.
So we say no, it's not just what you eat, it's not just the supplement, it's not just the topical. If you can practice yoga, if you can meditate, if you can just go for a walk, outside and breathe and look at greenery, just anything you can do to put yourself into a better mental health state. That's really, really important. And basics, drinking water, staying hydrated.
I love that. And it's great that you're doing so much to help the community as well. And so, yeah, what's your eventual goal with your skincare products? Are you planning to? Yeah, actually, I'll let you share what your eventual goal and mission is.
So my goal is that we can stop the atopic march. So in specifically for eczema, like for acne, we want to clear people's skin. And there we're fighting the hormonal acne, which we're seeing more and more women develop hormonal acne in their 30s and their 40s. And so for eczema, really, it goes back to stopping the atopic march, giving people tools for when they have a newborn baby, so that they have the tools as the baby grows into a toddler and into a young child and into a teenager, that they can really slow down that atopic march. They can help prevent asthma. They can help prevent ear infections. They can help prevent ADHD, and that they give, in a way, that young person the best possible start in life to delay needing large-scale interventions, whether those are corticosteroids. And again, it's always good to have corticosteroids for that absolute flare that nothing is going to stop, but to basically have people understand to use them incredibly sparingly. When they were originally developed in the 70s, there was a maximum dosage that they didn't want you to go over, not to use them as a crutch, and basically to understand that after 3-4 days, you really should stop using them. You should not be using them continuously. You should not be using them more than maybe 5 days a month. And then if they can't hold it, then maybe you do need that biologic. Maybe you do need that Dupixent. But what we're trying to do is, if we can seal, it sounds really funny, but if we can seal up the baby, we can seal up their gut, we can seal up their skin. We're hoping that they never develop these massive inflammatory problems that then need the corticosteroids, that then need the biologic drugs.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense, and such a great mission as well. And I really appreciate you for sharing that. And now that we're at the end of our podcast, is there any last words that you want to say before we head off today?
That we're only a part of the solution. And Abby, people like you are incredibly important, because nutrition is important, stress management is important, making the right choices is important, and having experts to talk to. And I just want people, when I was going through eczema with my son, Google was just kind of starting out, and I spent a lot of time in Google, but it was really talking to people, both people who had gone through the same thing, and just everything from naturopathic doctors to herbalists to dermatologists to pediatricians. Really, the more experts you can find and talk to and learn, Eczema can be managed with knowledge, and so knowledge is power.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And if people want to look up your product, where can they find you?
They can find us on codexlabscorp.com.
That's great. Thank you so much, Barb. It was so nice having you on here today, and finally nice to meet you in person. And you have a wealth of knowledge. And I also read on your bio that you speak 5 languages as well. Is that right?
I do. English is my third language. I learned Czech and then I learned French. So my English might sound a little funny, but hopefully not too funny.
No, it sounds completely fluent. That's amazing. 5 languages. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Barb, for coming on the show today. And for everyone who's listening, I hope this episode helped you. Take care, and I hope you have a great week.
Thank you again, Abby.